My name's Jason Schuster. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I own Intricate Art Spine and Body Solutions. It's a continuing education company teaching other doctors how to do a couple things. Before that, I was a fly fishing guide in Patagonia, Chile, and southwestern Alaska for a decade. This is a clip from our online dry needling 2 class, Dry Needling to Improve Men's and Women's Pelvic Health. This is a great class. Check it out on our website, intricateartseminars.com, to get the full 10 CEU fully online class. Here's the QL, right? So there's the QL is the highlighted one in blue. It's still faded, so you can see through the QL there is the psoas major, and then it's attaching to the multifidus. The QL, you guys, I think about as like an opposite muscle to the middle scalene. So the QL takes the first rib, the QL takes the 12th rib and the lumbar transverse processes in the iliac crest, and it combines those together. And then the middle scalene takes the cervical transverse processes and the first rib and combines those together. So with needles, we can't really directly target the anterior scalene. So that's why I talk about the middle scalene and the posterior scalene. We can't really palpate directly. So the middle scalene we can find. I think about that one as the opposite muscle to the QL. There's the psoas major, again, highlighted in blue, just another angle, another viewpoint to look at it, you guys. Here are some arteries that give blood flow to the penis and to the pelvic floor, which cause big problems as far as erectile dysfunction. So we're going to get into the neurophysiology of erectile dysfunction here in a second, you guys. But as far as the arterial blood supply, so the blood going to the penis, that is the primary requirement to get and maintain an erection, is you need enough blood going into the penis to passively close the venous valves. The internal pudendal artery is one of the big ones that supplies a bunch of blood to that area. So look where it's coming from on the left picture, you guys. It's coming out kind of underneath the piriformis there. It's going right along the ischial tuberosity. So again, aside from the pelvic floor muscles, the hamstrings attached right there, you guys, the glutes, all that stuff. So any tightness in the ischial tuberosity area is going to make that artery a little bit more a little slower. It's going to lead to a little bit less blood flow than it would normally. Remember, our arteries have a single endothelial layer of smooth muscle, so the arteries themselves can contract. When the sympathetics go up, the arteries contract. That slows blood down. When the muscles get tight, those squish the veins and all that other stuff. They cause hypoxia. So there's the internal pudendal artery. On the left, you can see it going by the ischial tube. On the right, you can see it going right to the bulbous spongiosus and the base of the penis. Here's the superficial external pudendal artery. So that's another one that comes off the iliac artery there, you guys, right? So, or the femoral artery right there. And that one is obviously named superficial. It's a more superficial one, kind of goes to the top side of the penis. The internal pudendal one kind of goes to the bottom side, a little bit deeper one. Both of those supply a significant amount of blood flow to the penis and are important to maintain an erection. Here's another one, you guys. So the pudendal artery was kind of on the inner side of the ischial tube. Here's the inferior gluteal artery, which is kind of on the outside of the ischial tube, more or less where the sciatic nerve would be. So that one's coming out right near the sciatic nerve. Another reason to needle close to nerves, not only because dry needling is a nervous system treatment and needling close to nerves stimulates and changes the nervous system more. It's just the way that biological things, and most things as far as we know, are set up, is that mostly nerves, arteries, and veins kind of run together. So this artery is more or less along the lines with the sciatic nerve there. It's another really important one. Obviously, that's right along the area where people sit all the time. If people are sitting at a computer all day long, they're going to have tons of compression, hypoxia in that area. Again, remember, arteries can't really get closed off by muscles, but the arteries themselves can contract and close themselves off. And the more tight, nasty muscle tissue you have around arteries, that makes both the arteries and the nerves and the veins hypoxic around there, right? So the nerves need blood just like everything else. Arteries have blood going into them and out of them from muscles and other things, right? So if the muscles get tight, that slows down all of the fluid dynamics of the whole thing. It's like clogging up a pipe or making a whole bunch of pipes in a house smaller than they would normally be. It just backs up fluid movement throughout the whole body. And one of the other things, you guys, that was just discovered recently is that our cerebral spinal fluid is continuous with all of our nerves. They're calling it endoneural fluid. So they did this study with gold nanoparticles, and they stuck them in the plexuses in people's brains, and they wanted to see how long it took for the gold nanoparticles to go in throughout the spine and the spinal fluid. And what they found when they did the imaging at the end were the nanoparticles in the toes and the fingertips. So now we know that our cerebral spinal fluid is actually continuous with all of our nerves. So there's got to be things like that with the arteries and veins too, where if a little section is aggravated anywhere in the system, it's going to have a detrimental effect on the entire system, which is another good reason to think about treating as much of the body each time you treat people as you can, you guys, because that helps eliminate some of those fluid dynamic backups and a lot of different stuff. A lot of the stuff that we're improving, we're just not even aware of right now, but it's very, very important to treat the entire body. You just get better overall results with people. Here's the sympathetic chain, you guys. So the sympathetic portion of this chain, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a bit, remember, is from like C7, T1 down to like L1, L2, and then the parasympathetic areas are up near the upper cervical because the cranial nerve, some of the cranial nerves, 5, 7, 9, and 10, and then down in the sacral plexus area, S2 to S4. So there's the sympathetic chain. The sympathetic portion would be up more in the lumbar spine, thoracic area, and then if you look down on the front side of the sacrum there, that's the S2 to S4 nerve roots, and that is the parasympathetic dominant nerve roots that are innervating the 9 pelvic floor muscles to some degree or other. The only pelvic floor muscle that has innervation from outside of S2 to S4 is the obturator internus that has some innervation from the lumbar spine. As far as the books tell us, that's the only one of the 9 pelvic floor muscles that has innervation from outside some combination of S2 to S4. Here's, like I mentioned, you guys, the ureter coming off the kidneys, and that's sitting right on the front side of the psoas major. So another good reason to needle the psoas major. Any type of urinary problems, things like that. Not only does it help a huge amount with erectile dysfunction, but it helps with all sorts of pelvic health problems, both on males and females. And here's a good cross-section of the illustration of the male pelvic floor. So I'll play it here for you guys. All right, guys, and then if we go through the muscles here, just to see which muscles are which in this orientation, right? So obturator externus there. There's the pectineus. There's the obturator internus. Right? Psoas major, iliacus, rec fem, TFL, poop max here, right? Perineals, or sorry, the coccygeus. The gemelli, right? So those are the hip external rotators and the other obturator in there, and the piriformis. So this is a good kind of different view to look at the pelvic floor. I think it just gives us a better idea of where all the structures are oriented in there. To get into the actual neurophysiologic process of getting an erection, maintaining an erection, and how all that stuff happens, let's talk about this for a little bit, because it's very counterintuitive on how guys get an erection. At least to me it is, and I think it's counterintuitive to most people. So this is something that's not super like common sense stuff. So as far as erectile dysfunction goes, erectile dysfunction is defined as the inability, occasional or habitual, to get and maintain an adequate penile erection for a satisfactory sexual intercourse. And the two studies that I've included in here, you guys, there's one from 2023, and then there's a really good acupuncture study there from 2024. So these are two newer, up-to-date studies. More or less the same general information that's been provided in research studies for quite a while on erectile dysfunction. So as far as the prevalence of ED goes, ED is way, way too common. Unless there's specific structural damage to something, no guy should suffer from erectile dysfunction. I don't care how old you are, right? If you can get up and walk around and take care of yourself and stuff, no guy should have erectile dysfunction. The problem is the nervous system itself. It's not the muscles. So all of the mainstream medical treatments that are looking at erectile dysfunction are focusing on the wrong thing. just like they focus on the wrong thing for everything else. They focus on the symptoms and not the cause of the problem. So this is a horrible number, you guys. If you're between 40 and 70, per some studies, they say there's about a 40% rate of men with erectile dysfunction. So I'm 42. If you're over the age of 40, about 50% of guys have erectile dysfunction. That's insane. And then most studies they show that the numbers go up by somewhere around 10% per decade after 40. So 50% of 50-year-olds have some type of ED, 60% of 60-year-olds, blah, blah, blah. That is unacceptable. It should be closer to like 0% or 5% maybe, you guys. And only if you're like older, really older with like some significant health problems. Otherwise, ED is totally fixable, which should be super exciting for so many people. It's just that nobody talks about the underlying reason that erectile dysfunction happens. And the reason they don't talk about it is because it's so easy to fix and it's such a huge moneymaker that it would just stop a huge amount of money from being made across the board by selling people pills, right? So among the most frequent causes of ED are neurogenic and vascular factors, which become evident and tend to increase with age, often in combination with other pathologies like hypertension, diabetes, atherosclerosis, hyperdyslipidemia, metabolic syndrome, etc., all that stuff. So these papers say that the most common causes are neurogenic and vascular factors. That's true. The cause, you guys, the cause of erectile dysfunction is chronic sympathetic autonomic nervous system hyperactivity. That is the underlying cause, which causes muscles to contract. It causes body-wide vasoconstriction, it causes hypoxia, and it causes a decrease in blood flow. We'll get into this just right now about like why exactly that causes problems with ED, right? So there's a huge amount of reasons that guys can get ED, but just like with any other impairment, the most common underlying cause of the sympathetic hyperactivity is eating processed food, not eating good food, not supplementing, not getting enough of the base elements and nutrients that your body requires to maintain health, right? So that would be one super easy one. Not exercising is another one. 80% of the United States population is overweight, obese, or morbidly obese, so that's a big problem. And just a lack of treatment that actually focuses on addressing the underlying problem rather than treatments that just address the symptoms, which do work temporarily, but they work temporarily. So this is a very, very easy thing to actually fix if you just understand the reason why it's happening in the first place, right? So another huge cause of ED, you guys, is psychological, and we'll talk about that in a couple of slides here. But in general, and this is the counterintuitive thing, erectile dysfunction is a parasympathetic dominant process. You'd think that like you're all excited, you're going to have sex, the sympathetics are up, and that would be what it is. But it's actually a parasympathetic process. So the arteries need to vasodilate, your muscles need to relax down there in your genital area so enough blood can go into the penis where it takes those venous valves and the internal pressure just goes whoop, and it shuts the vein valves off. So you have more blood going into the penis than you have coming out, and that maintains the pressure. It shuts those veins off, and that's how you maintain an erection. If you don't have enough blood flow combined with your muscles are too rigid to where they can't swell with enough blood, then the veins typically kind of get like partially stuck open. So if these are your vein valves, to maintain a normal erection, you want those. Thanks for watching, you guys. If you like this clip, keep an eye on my channel. I'm going to keep putting clips from both of our online dry needling classes. This was a clip from our online dry needling 2 class, Dry Needling to Improve Men's and Women's Pelvic Health. Check it out on our website, intricateartseminars.com, or check out our school channel, school.com/CEU, SKOOL.com/CEU, to get a big discount on our dry needling bundle. It's a bundle of both of our online dry needling classes for a big discount.